ourselves a nice filter. Okay. All right. I'll see you guys in a second. Bunch of shit. I got off a little early from work, and of course, life is like, oh, you're getting off early from work. Well, you need to do this and that and that and this and that and this and this is going to happen, and then your mom's going to call, and then your sister's going to call, and it's like, okay, all right. This is all good. I love talking to my family. I love getting things done. But yeah, that's life. And we are in pre-show. And
there was like a gift set of like the news crier from Rome talking about like and he's like it's like Christmas memes, and I would love to find it. What was that guy's name?
Good question. Hang on.
News crier.
The newsreader. That's what he's known
as. The newsreader.
This is one of those kind of esoteric memes that, like, it's burned in your brain, but trying to find it, Google's like, I can't help you, man. Like,
I'll never find it.
Yeah.
It literally, it will never...
No, here's the thing. You'll find it in, like, the middle of January for some reason. And you'll just be like, fuck! All right, yeah, there it is.
Wait, that's a great GIF. But I need like one without captions.
Oh. For some reason.
Oh, God damn it.
Damn it.
It's just fucking Mark Antony's fucking cock.
Oh.
That's all Tumblr GIFs are gonna give you.
Yeah, man. Just immediate penis.
What a shame. All right.
We got no one in here yet.
I haven't posted anything, unfortunately.
That's okay.
So...
I should probably do a live thing too. That would be... Oh, there you go.
No.
Santa deniers will be lashed. Those who state Christmas is a pagan holiday will be crucified. You know what? I'm gonna go make that fucking meme. Hang on.
Yeah, just go for it. Like, you know what I'm talking about now.
Yep. But that's not the town crier. It's like he's like the main character.
Oh no, you're right. Yeah,
Oh.
it's is it Caesar or Mark Antony? Like,
No,
trying to get discipline in the troops or whatever.
It's the first. Oh, hang on. Main character Rome TV show.
I mean, guys, Julius Caesar is the main character.
He is technically. So Lucius Vorenus. He's the legionnaire captain.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's just a great show, and we've talked about that show before. But like the thing is that they had the whole plan to like do
more.
Like, they did one time jump to get to Caesar Augustus, like rise to power and the October Horse kind of period of history with Mark Antony and stuff, and they were totally setting up like the Judea and like Christ thing, and then like it's so obvious that they're like we were watching it, and fiance is just like, why do they keep going to this, like, this Jewish guy and stuff like that. I'm like, oh yeah, they're gonna do, they want to do like a whole set on like Jesus in like 14 years, like it's gonna happen. Like just another time jump, that's all they need to do. And then like the whole show gets canceled because HBO gets a new executive, and he's like, oh, I know that show that was ridiculously popular and like made us a bunch of money, but like
gotta kill that.
That's a legacy program and we gotta kill it, so fuck you.
Oh Lord. Justice knows every man, blah 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 blah. All right, I'm gonna have to look for this later because it's like, it's still enough in the lexicon that like people know it, but trying to actually find the quote, Google's like, I don't know what the fuck you're talking about, man. We go live here, and yeah, I have no like, I have no discussion itinerary for this episode. Like it's December, it's Christmas. There's a bunch of shit happening. We're gonna pop all over the place for what we're talking about anyway. So it's like, what's the point? Man, where the fuck is everybody? Come on, bitches. Come and get it. It's my fault for moving the time around. Our loyal viewers are expecting us to be here tomorrow night.
Yeah, we'll get tons of views tomorrow. All dozen of them.
All dozen. Hell yeah. You know what? Fuck it. I'll just kick
Post in the podcast feed or anything?
Yeah, I did actually. Hang on. All right. By using everyone, you are about to message 50 plus people. Are you sure? Yes. Wake up, ladies and gents.
It's fucking Wednesday at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. Like
10:30 Eastern Time if you're that kind of person. Nobody should be asleep. And yeah, all right, let me kick the intro and we'll just do it. Hello, everyone who will eventually be watching this, and welcome to the Altar Podcast, episode 195. We are Jollymaxxed, and we are Yulepilled. This is a pro-Christmas podcast. We say Merry Christmas to everyone here. And, yeah, we're just kind of chilling. We're going to be talking about a bunch of random bullshit. It'll help a lot more if you fuckers would actually show up and we actually have a time plan and we're doing things. But, of course, like I said, it is totally my fault for switching the time around. We're all creatures of habit. And I actually don't apologize. But it happened.
there's no. It's too late to apologize.
It's too late to
It's too
apologize.
early to apologize.
We have
because
we
we
have
moved the show up.
it's too early to apologize, and by the time you see this, it'll be too late because we already have, in essence, crossed the Rubicon as far as the time change goes. And we're just going to be throwing Rome puns in there all fucking night. Oh, we got one! Hello, one. Hello, you. Welcome to the show.
It might be me just simul-streaming it.
God. All right. That's cool. Yeah, so I guess, like, I did kind of want to touch on the peace deal for Ukraine, which I know is, like, tumultuous even to begin with, has kind of fallen through again. Because Zelensky has met with various leaders of European countries who have pledged additional support. And he's like, all right, but we're not fucking ceding any territory. And it's like, oh, okay, great. All right, here we are again. It's just like, you are really not in a position to make demands. Plain and simple. Like, you have had, I don't know how many years now, 3 years, 3.5 years, to not just, like, you don't even have to necessarily push the Russians back. You do have to stop losing ground constantly all the time. And that's the thing.
Well, it's the thing about like a military collapse is that it's like very slow and then all at once.
Exactly. Yeah.
And even like a very organized, well-supported military that just straight up runs out of manpower, to the point that like they just can't plug the holes anymore, and then people are just driving through. And I think that's the thing, like, that these peace talks are covering up is that if you probably went through the logistics analysis on the Russian side right now, they'd probably say like, hey, we could probably risk just doing a full advance, and it would turn into November 1918 on the Western Front.
Yeah,
basically. Because yeah, the manpower reserves in Ukraine, like, people about like the casualty ratios, and I know there's like those NAFO bros that like blow up the idea that like, oh, Russia's losing 3 guys to every Ukrainian guy or some stupid shit like that.
And it's like that doesn't.
It's probably closer 1-to-1.
Probably.
Let's be real. And in that scenario, like, Russia's got just like 5 times the manpower to throw at this issue.
Exactly. And how much longer can Ukraine, like, obviously they're getting some help from the outside. There are, of course, like, foreign individuals who've gone to Ukraine ostensibly to fight Russia. Friend of the show, Luke, supposedly has done that. Luke M. 1911. Do you remember that? He was on the show talking about it a little bit.
I don't remember that. I maybe that was an episode I missed or something. But
I mean, maybe I think you were here, or Matt was. It was an interesting tale. I love Luke, so I'm not going to say I don't necessarily.
Honestly, I'm not going to fault people for maybe having some sense of 19th century adventurism in them left over. I just think as far as this war will go down as even more pointless than World War I.
Yep.
In the end of history, and it's just like, you know, if you're gonna be a mercenary, like, where's our Rhodesia?
Seriously.
Like, do shit like that. So I'm trying to see.
Like, you're just dodging drones the entire time. That's not fun.
Yeah, that's. I mean, every era of warfare looks completely unglorious compared to the previous era, in a sense.
Is it maneuver or trench? Sorry, could you explain?
We are like in the situation. Well, like, the Western canon is basically like, if it's not you personally dueling Hector, then it's like, it feels like it's a little short of like true glory.
Yeah.
that will live throughout history.
You're not
You know
personally
what I mean?
dueling Hector. You're not storming the beach at Normandy. You're not breaking through the Iron Ring around Berlin. Like, it's just not. There is an Iron Ring. There's lots of Iron Rings of trenches and drones and shit. But like, this is just gonna go down as like, hey, remember that god awful meat grinder in Eastern Europe? You're gonna have to be more specific. The one where Russia invaded that sovereign country, you're gonna have to be more specific. The one where it was really pointless and lots of people died, and it was like a quagmire of like bringing out older weapons and fielding them with newer weapons, and there are weapons from all sorts of countries. And you're gonna have to be more specific. Like that's the other thing is like this is nothing new, but at the same time it is because it's like the same terrors with modern terror added in. Like I said, you've got drones, you've got not necessarily peer to peer, but you've got more. It's more than essentially what we saw, like with the U.S. and Iraq and Afghanistan, where it was really asymmetrical to like, you're basically fighting like dudes with technicals and like very basic man pads and RPGs and basic like heavy weapon positions, mortars, all of this against like Lockheed Martin's entire arsenal and Northrop Grumman, and they're just like they're literally out here just to flex. And that's in a way, it's very much like we have all of these fancy things and tanks and missiles and bombs and aircraft. And really, what it just comes down to, unfortunately, is squads of soldiers going fucking house to house in areas and clearing motherfuckers out. And that's
Well,
what.
okay, so like the whole like M7 rifle project to like give us this like
Sorry.
oh okay like we're in like the Afghan mountains and some dude from 800 meters away is taking pot shot or like dumping PKM belts at us,
Yeah.
and we really need a rifle that can reach out to 800 meters and deliver like kill shots through cover,
Hmm.
and we really need to be as short as the current M4, so we need a ridiculous pressure so that the barrel might be short, but we have like this huge pressure and concussion. So I guess we need a suppressor on the front that increases the weight anyways.
Hmm.
Um, and then like the ammo is like two or one third to like 40% more heavy than
Hmm.
the other ammo. So it's like we run out of ammo faster as we're trying to suppress this thing that's like 800 meters away. And it's like, you can't even see, they've done studies, you can't even see people when you take cover and go prone or whatever, like
Hmm.
the odds of you seeing someone more than 300 yards away,
Is very.
like that your shoulder mounted arm or your light or what's the word I'm looking for, your
Light arms,
man portable weapons
man portable weapon systems.
man portable weapon systems that are direct fire
Mm.
should all be basically tailored to about 300 yards.
Yeah.
Like, okay, maybe you can see, like, and let's give like a DMR per squad,
Mm.
so that like at least there's one guy who's shooting 7.62 or 6.8 or whatever,
Mm.
and or 6.5, probably be the best caliber. That's can suppress targets that are further out and like has good glass or whatever. But most people, what the whole Ukraine war has shown
Mm.
over this time, what are they going to do, or what should a U.S. squad do when there's some dude dumping a PKM belt at them from 800 yards away? They're going to take cover. They're going to pull out the drone from the back of the Humvee or whatever.
Mm.
They're going to fly it over right to where he is.
And just either drop a grenade on him, or they're going to press the laser designate button, and then an FA-18 will drop a 2,000-pound bomb on this single individual's head, and that will be
Yeah,
that.
that would that honestly, that is how the Pentagon would solve the issue.
Yeah.
We should have very lightweight explosive, like flyable grenades is what they
Pretty
should
much.
be.
Yeah.
Right. And that's like they should be mass produced so that they don't cost fucking 7,000 or 70,000. I don't know what the Pentagon thinks they're going to cost to produce these things, but it's like 556 or even 300 blackout is perfectly acceptable. Honestly, I could see moving the US or like the small arms caliber to like a like, oh, most people get supersonic 300 blackout, and like a handful of people get subsonic for like very close quarters fighting or something like that.
Mm.
Because honestly, just being low detection is probably more useful than being able to hit targets at 500 yards.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
gonna be real. Um, but yeah, it's all fucked up.
Yeah.
Uh, Like we would think of like, yeah, glory is like storming the beach at Normandy,
Hmm.
but like that was not very glorious
No, it
in
was a
its own right.
slaughter. I
Like
mean, if you were,
it was
if you
just walking out of a fucking metal box and getting metal
chewed,
put through you,
like
but
if you
not
were the third
really
wave, it
like
was
that.
great because like they had already kind of advanced a little bit. They had a minor beachhead. You had a little bit more room to get off the fucking Higgins boat. But if you were that first wave, there was no glory. It was just you're either over the side and hoping not to drown, or you dropped within like the first second because oh wow, front loading doors on an invasion craft was not a great idea. Or yeah, or you took your squad and you climb up the side of the little cliff there and you advance slowly and try to use yourself as a distraction so your sniper can run up and shoot the machine gunner in the head, and then you guys run up and you throw grenades in the bunker, and then you have your flamethrower unit come out, and then you commit two war crimes, and then the one dude who speaks German goes, "Look, I washed for supper," and yeah, that's what happened. Like you were wave three. It wasn't too bad.
Some some Czech conscripts
Yeah,
who
we're not
are
German.
trying to actively surrender,
Their
like
hands
just
are
get
up.
shot on the spot.
Yeah, man, they just start picking their pockets immediately.
Uh, I'm sorry to laugh, but it's just so fucking
Like
sad.
it is sad. It's also it's funny because like that was like the first time in a major war movie about World War II like that where they actually depicted like American GIs committing war crimes. Because if you think about a lot of the movies that came out before, it was very not realistic, of course, but like Patton or Battle of the Bulge or The Longest Day or something like that. Like everybody's fucking John Wayne and just doing everything right. And that's actually another reason why like it wasn't the best movie in the world, but I liked Fury because they kind of gave a more like nuanced perspective on the war. Like not all Americans were good guys necessarily. Not all Germans were necessarily evil. Um, but yeah,
I mean, it takes me to like Inglorious Bastards, where it's like the
oh,
Germans are comically evil.
yeah, and like that was a good movie, but it also that just got so tiring.
Yeah. Well, I was gonna say the SS off, or like he's not even an SS officer. He's just a normal Wehrmacht officer
Mm.
that they capture in the ambush.
Yeah, that's right.
And
Yeah,
he says, "Oh, did you get that
for
like a
killing
lapel or
Jews,
for killing
bravery.
Jews?" And he, well, that's the thing, is like he knows he's getting killed
Yeah,
anyways, and he's just like, I'm just gonna troll the shit out of these guys.
exactly.
Like,
Yeah.
um so or that's the way I interpret that scene. Is not
Mhm.
necessarily like, oh, he's just this comically evil guy.
Oh no,
uh like he's just like, hey, you know,
like do your worst.
they might torture me if I, like, just
Mhm.
don't with if I withhold information. If I make them really mad, they'll just kill
They'll
me
just kill
outright
me
really quick.
immediately. Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember
uh
too. So, do you remember? Oh man, it wasn't the Band of Brothers video game series. It was Brothers in Arms, I think it was. Used to be a
mm,
pretty solid, like kind of tactical shooter. You would like give squad commands to your soldiers, and the whole thing was to have you'd have like one squad would like suppress
was
the
it
enemy.
first person or third
It was
person,
first
or
person, um,
okay?
but it
Yeah,
was
I think I
very
kind of remember that.
it was pretty decent for what it was, and it was like you go over like the horrors of war. There's like the main character in one of the games. He's running through Holland during Operation Market Garden. Of course, it's a bad time for the Allies, and he's like having active PTSD episodes from shit that happened earlier in the game, and he's trying to deal with that at the same time. and it's like it's a very dramatic and humanizing thing. And then they took the series and they tried to like kind of reboot it a little bit, and they essentially turned it into like it was literally like Team Fortress, but you were fighting Nazis. And it was just like these comic dudes and this cell shaded shit and a bunch of just like generic Wehrmacht German soldiers that were just getting mercilessly slaughtered in the most comic and disgusting fashion. And it literally made people just go, okay, hang on. This is a bit much. Like, yeah, they're Nazis, they're Germans, whatever, it's World War II. Like, come on, man. Like, it's just a little excessive.
Well, I'm trying to think of like one of the more like I don't I don't know if the word's compassionate, but it's more nuanced understandings of like portrayals of German soldiers in a video game, and I can't help but think of Red Orchestra 2.
Red Orchestra 2, I don't know if you ever
Because
played it.
even in the single player campaign, like the German soldiers are like reading out to each other, or like they say things to each other like, oh, we'll stop the Bolsheviks now, like we're gonna get the communists and stuff like that. It's like the exact same things like an American soldier would say in Vietnam.
Exactly.
And, and like they're not talking about like racial purity or like
Or Lebensraum or anything like that, yeah.
Yeah, anything like that. Like they're just like, oh yeah, we need to defend the homeland from these
from the fucking couple of Bolsheviks, and yeah. Well,
and like that, I was like, and like, I'm not sure what the post-war war like interviews were, but like probably if you ask most of the conscripted like German soldiers that were in the main army, not the SS guys, right? But you know, in fact that brings us back to Ukraine. Even the SS guys from like the Galician SS or whatever, they were like, oh yeah, we don't want Russian rule over our country. We were fighting with the Germans to have sovereignty for Ukraine or something like that.
That's
although they were and like, oh, they get a standing ovation in the Canadian Parliament for this guy, and then everybody's like, I don't
he's
want
like, oh wait, hang on, wait, oops.
Yeah, didn't you like kill a village full of like
So another game that actually like did a pretty good job of it. I don't know if you ever played the original Company of Heroes at all. Not COH2.
See, I remember Medal of Honor, which was like a shot-for-shot like remake of Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah,
came out like right around the same time. Like the EA was just like, "Fuck it, we're making that." And then Call of Duty I played a lot of.
So Company of Heroes was RTS, so it was a strategy game. Basically, you would like build an army, so you create squads and tanks, and you'd have support powers and shit. But they released an expansion pack called, I think it was called Opposing Fronts. And they had a campaign where you played as a special detachment of like the German Wehrmacht that were, I think they were like some sort of mechanized unit that also has access to like Luftwaffe shit. But from their perspective, it wasn't anything about like pro-Nazism or like trying to like, all right, we're going to ethnically clean a village. It was like, the war is not going well. We're doing what we can to defend the homeland. The only thing we can really do is like there was a mission where you're in Operation Market Garden, and essentially like you get sent there and the British drop in, and it's your job to try to like basically you're going through Arnhem and you're taking Arnhem back from the British. And it's cool because you're like commanding like King Tigers and shit. But it's very much like we're just trying to defend Germany.
We have enough gasoline to run it for 2 hours, guys.
Exactly. All right, guys, we got to use this 2 hours. One of them, not both, just one. Pick which one it is. The one with the best working transmission. All right, that one. Perfect. Excellent. But the very last mission is, I think, God, was it America? Okay, so you're fighting Americans and British, and there's like a river, and I'm pretty sure what you're trying to do is you're defending this riverside and this road, and you're essentially just holding a gap open for retreating German soldiers to come through and escape. And I think it's supposed to be like the Fulda Gap or something like that. but essentially you're not defending a concentration camp, you're not helping Hitler out. You're just essentially you're defending the homeland, and you're just trying to essentially save your brothers in arms from being killed, and like bringing them back, and like just trying to essentially stay alive. And it's more of like a brotherhood camaraderie thing. And they had a kind of cool thing going on with like British SAS and Special Forces, who also, of course, have their market garden missions. But their main powers was like gliders and just very light and mobile stuff. Like your bases were vehicles, and you could pick them up and move them around, and they each had their own things. You could summon their own units, and you could call down gliders, which would have like special like SAS squads, which each had different powers and shit.
Was Company of Heroes like kind of based on the same setup as like the Dawn of War series?
Yes, same producers, I
Okay.
believe.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Now I'm kind of coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't play that particular like expansion pack ever.
So there were two of my favorite missions, or of course you're playing as the Germans. One is you are one of the battalions that essentially ambushes the British when they first get to like Holland. And it's cool because it's like a night mission, and it's raining, and you literally have like a bunch of Jagdpanthers, which are just like big tank hunters. And it's kind of just you set them up, and they like have these cool ass cutscenes where they're literally like running through the woods, and they pop out and they shoot like a British column from the side, and the whole column stops, and then you're ambushing it. But my favorite mission was the Tiger Ace missions, because of course you're in a Tiger tank, and you're like an advanced ace crew with a bunch of kills. And as you progress through the story, you start getting power-ups. Like you get better armor improvements, you get engine improvements, you get machine gun improvements, you get cannon improvements. But instead of just like right-clicking and controlling where the unit goes, you actually had like a WASD setup where you were driving it and aiming and shooting. And it was kind of like, I don't know if you've ever played Men of War at all, or ever heard of that. But it's like a very highly detailed other kind of RTS thing, mostly multiplayer. But like it has like these very technical things. So kind of like in War Thunder, when you're like aiming a tank and you're over a certain part, it'll go like green or yellow or red for like if your shell's going to penetrate or if it's going to do damage or not. But it was very detailed. It was cool. I played the shit out of it with my friends back in the day. Like one of my OG online gaming groups, we would just comp stomp on Company of Heroes. We would pick a map where we could essentially make the computers bottleneck, and we would make the computers like an extreme difficulty, and we'd have 4 of them just so they were occupying like the entire other side of the map, and we would just build defenses and just blow up the computer for like hours. It was fun.
Well, that's what I remember about like Red Orchestra 2.
Yeah.
Is that like they had the bot system set up,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, you could kind of just like, oh, I'm gonna level all my weapons to the maximum and get like whatever like the special scope that like never was like issued to 100 rifles in real life.
Yeah.
But no, I never really played that, and I might have to pick that up.
You definitely should. Company of Heroes 1, definitely better than Company of Heroes 2. Company of Heroes 3 is really not great. It basically is what Civilization 7 is to the Civilization series. It's like kind of like a strip mined, like boiled down, nearly featureless, very soulless MOBA game, and it's just not good.
Did they ever go to, so like one game I did enjoy but like was way too deep for me to like, you know when a game's like too complicated and then it's mostly multiplayer, so like
Yeah.
you always feel like you're at a complete disadvantage. So like the war game.
Oh my god. Yeah, I played War Game, and then I played Red Dragon. And then there was another one called like Arno, which essentially was like the same
Warno.
thing. Warno, yes. So that's fun. It is incredibly autistic. And
Yes.
you have these online matches that will sometimes go for like an hour or two, but it's also very much like if one person on your team doesn't pull their weight correctly and they leave a gap and the other team exploits it, you can literally get fucked within like the first 5 minutes. Like there are certain maps, like there's one that's like an isthmus essentially. An isthmus essentially is like two places of land kind of meeting over like a narrow land bridge thing, right? That's an isthmus. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So you have that,
Yeah.
and you can call in like naval support. You can bring in like ships, but you have like a limited amount of points you can spend on like what military you want to pick. So you can go for like an assault thing. You can have like a bunch of main battle tanks and mechanized infantry and go for a rush, try to capture points. You can do a naval deck, which essentially is you're like kind of providing naval support. You're countering the other team's ships. But when you do that, you also provide a lot of anti-air cover, and you can like launch missiles onto land strikes and like land targets and do that. You can do an air-heavy deck where you're essentially just kind of like you're rolling fighters. There was also some people would do like a chopper deck where essentially you would have like this massive, massive group of helicopters, and you'd have like attack helicopters and support helicopters like scout helicopters, and then you'd have troop transports which had squads like already pre-assigned, and they'd essentially just have to get where they're going and land and drop the troops. And if you do that right, you can literally like if you're imagining this map and like you've got land up here and land down here with this little narrow bridge in the center, they would send their stuff all the way around and like come back here, and if you do it right and you catch like the opposite team not protecting their home spawns, you can drop a bunch of troops right there and cut off their whole supply line, and you fuck them from the start. But like I really loved basically doing a mixture of support and like close air support. So I would do like logistics trains. I would literally run like ammo trucks back and forth. I would have artillery. I would use anti-air units. And then I would also have like airstrike packages. I've had napalm. You'd have like anti-tank packages and shit like that. But it's very easy to either do really well and wipe the enemy out, or literally just get your stack wiped in the first 5 minutes, and like that's it. You have nothing. You just sit there for the rest of the game, or you leave. But it was fun until it wasn't, and it was definitely one of those like the community does not tolerate noobs or weakness. So if you suck,
it's really difficult.
It's really difficult. Yeah.
To me, what it iterated was the importance of having a dispersed command structure in modern warfare.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
like when you realize or what that game would very quickly illustrate to anybody running any operation is that you need lots of very competent NCOs that can execute
all of these
or not even just NCOs, but like just staff officers and everything like that they can actually execute those kinds of and have initiative to do the level of micro that you would need to have to just manage. I mean, it's like these StarCraft players at a certain level, like but at a certain point, like StarCraft is actually simpler than
it's just clicks.
Like war game gets. So that is where I was like, this is on my wish list, but I don't think I'll ever actually play it. Like, not
the biggest thing, like I said, if it had a more welcoming community that was willing to tolerate like newcomers, it would be great. But it's just not. And like, admittedly, if you fuck up, you fuck up. But like, if you fuck up, they're basically like, not that like being called names in a video game really bothers me. But like, if you are a little more sensitive and you're just kind of getting into it, you're still getting a feel, and you literally like, let's say you try to run like an air attack deck, but you're a little bit new and you don't know how certain things work, and you get wiped out immediately, and they'll call you all sorts of fucking names, and it's just not nice. And like, people quit the game, and then like if you do that, you usually get like some sort of penalty for your overall profile. And like, if they would like in the lobby sometimes, like if you have like a certain number of quits before a game finishes, they'll like boot you because it's like, you're a poor sport. So like, it makes it hard. But
we have a viewer.
We have a viewer. Wow. Hello.
It's the Cybersmith.
It's the Cybersmith. Cybersmith, my friend. If you would actually like to call in too, we'd actually love to have you on. We can definitely talk about. Yeah, we're just shooting the shit. We're talking about war in general, war video games. But yeah, if you want to
But
talk about
the
Venezuela.
question he had was about the Venezuela
Oh
situation.
yeah, that
He's
is
discussed on some previous podcasts, but like
it's
we're on the topic of war.
Yeah, and it's a constantly developing situation. The United States actually did we seized a Venezuelan tanker today.
Yeah, that's kind of a big deal.
That's a very big deal. That's like, all right, now we're blockading their shipping. We're not letting them through. It's like, all right, that's basically we're basically in a state of war. Like if we have our navy postured up and we're basically telling Maduro to either quit or he's going to get bombed, and now we're like capturing their ships. Like there's really not a whole lot left between that and like actual strikes on Venezuelan soil.
Well, okay, if we're privateering, so okay, there's a difference between like, oh, we claim this small vessel was, a drug trafficking vessel, taking part in smuggling in international waters. We can take it out of the water. That's kind of one level of maritime law.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying it's like the right way to handle it. They would normally be able to intercept the vessel, and then you would board it and seize the smuggled goods, and then you'd try them. And you could try them at sea and have an execution. They're just like skipping all those parts.
Yeah. Oh yeah, cyberspace like letters of marque. Technically, we should be going doing that. But
yeah, no, but I think seizing a merchant vessel that is carrying it's not necessarily carrying like drugs or whatever. It's carrying oil or petroleum products or whatever.
It's carrying Brando.
It's got a legitimate product on it, but it's coming from the wrong country, so we're going to seize that vessel. Where that comes from? Or I'm curious where its destination was supposed to be. Obviously, if it came from Venezuela, that's one thing. That we're like, oh, we're issuing an embargo. An embargo is an act of war.
Yeah.
Right. Like there's one thing for like taking Cybersmith's country as like a example, like, oh, we have a letter of marque for any vessel that's carrying slaves across the Atlantic. We can intercept them and free the slaves and do that. That's what the British Royal Navy did all throughout the 18th century, right? But that letter of marque to seize and it's like, oh, that good might be legal, or I hate to call slavery might be legal in the Arroyo Kingdom and in Brazil, but to Britain, like, you're in international waters and we rule the seas and we say the trade of slaves is illegal and thus it's illegal and we're going to seize your ship. Like, I get that, but the U.S. isn't claiming that shipping oil is illegal, period. And I get the drugs argument, but like seizing an oil tanker is like, yeah, they're stepping into a new form of maritime law. I'm not sure where it is. Like it's one thing if you're an enemy combatant nation, like Ukraine just blew up a Russian oil tanker, right?
Yes, he did. And yes, they did. There he is. Now we're cooking.
And you don't have to join by video if you feel like you're. Oh no, you look great.
Not really at my best. Yeah.
But so like the letters of marque thing, I could totally see it for the drug trafficking. I just don't understand for an oil tanker, if it makes sense.
Well, for an oil tanker, there is an argument to be made that it's supporting the drug trade and that it's seized as war material. But yeah, I think there is that intermediary step, and you could argue that the seizing of the oil tanker means that that's no longer an option. I think a case could be made that they've now escalated to a point where you can't even do that intermediary level. As I said, sorry, I'm looking Sophie, and sorry, the place is a bit of a mess. I've got a bunch of recycling I haven't taken out. Yeah, life has not been great in Old Blighty. unironically, you could invade us right now. You would be greeted as liberators. It's so.
So
fucked
I have
here.
I had a
It is
question
so
because
fucked here.
I read today that the the Royal Fleet is basically getting mothballed at this point, right? Is that something?
To some extent, it's costing too much to maintain it. It's not quite to the level of Russia where they're decommissioning it, but it's stepping down a lot of activity. But the equipment itself is being preserved. That's my understanding. Now, keep in mind, I don't have as much information as I used to have because I'm no longer working where I had been working. But no, it's absolutely awful. Keir Starmer has mishandled the economy so badly. He has mishandled everything so badly. We've had some truly terrible rulers in our past. We've had John the First. We had Cromwell. I think you could make a compelling case that Keir Starmer is actually worse than all of them. I think you could make a case that he is the absolute worst leader we've ever had. But that does bring me some degree of confidence because King John the First was so bad that prompted us to have the Magna Carta, where we took our ancient liberties. You've got to remember the rights that were encoded in the Magna Carta didn't originate there. This was just, this is when we'll put it in writing. But they were long established.
Yeah.
I look like I'm about to turn into a fucking energy being here. I've got these two ring lights above my desk. It's winter. I live in Scotland, and I'm naturally not very swarthy at the even in summer. So I'm literally fucking glowing in this light. But no. So that's something. And then with Cromwell, after Cromwell, we got the establishment of the balance between the monarchy and Parliament was established after him. So I do think that the backlash to bad rulers does tend to make things better. The restoration of Charles II to the throne did overall improve the country. It took the really bad turn through Cromwell, but that was when we realized, okay, how do we stop another Cromwell from happening? Well, here's where we enshrine, this is what the monarch has the right to do. The monarch has the right to dissolve Parliament. The monarch has the right to be consulted on legislation. Go back to King John. What do the citizens of England have the right to? What do subjects of the English crown have the right to? They have the right to petition. They have the right to writs of habeas corpus. They have the right to trial by jury, which Starmer is now trying to get rid of.
I saw that. That's insane to me. Like, literally.
Yeah, this is when I tell you that this is fucking unprecedented. Keep in mind, King John didn't actually try to do that. They put out the Magna Carta to make sure he wouldn't try to do that. But that wasn't actually one of the things he fucking did. Even he understood that was a red goddamn lie.
There's like a list of like rulers who suspended the right to a jury trial, and it's like, oh, Castro and Mao and Stalin and Keir Starmer.
Not good people. And now it's that.
As Americans, we watch. I watch the UK and see it as the mother country and see it as what our law system in just a different variation could.
There, but for the grace of Wayne Lapierre, go you.
I'm sorry.
Oh.
How's Humor doing, by the way? Is he still around?
He's around. He has kind of been on hiatus. He left Tumblr for, I'm sure you heard about the whole thing earlier this year, but he's still doing.
I got an account deleted on Tumblr earlier this year. I had to remake that. Jobs come and go, girlfriends come and go, cancel culture is eternal.
Exactly. Yeah, unfortunately.
I just I see the UK and then recent success stories like Italy and Poland now have just made bounds economically compared to where Britain has made, and I'm
Part of it
wondering.
is that we're being punished for Brexit, but the really fucked up thing is it's not so much the EU punishing us. We have a bureaucrat class that did not want Brexit and is almost openly just saying we're going to fuck this country up to punish it for having the temerity to vote to leave the EU. It's insane. We are governed by the most illegitimate clade of people. They don't just disagree about how to benefit Britain, they actively hate Britain and they admit it. It is honestly perverse.
So as you said, we could be greeted as liberators. I just wonder if there's any.
If you actually invaded if you had something like the Nuremberg trials for all of those grooming gangs, genuinely, we would build statues to Donald Trump.
Oh, wow!
The sentiment in this country against some of the things we've had to put up with, you really have no idea.
I just wonder, is there any capacity where the election could be held early at this point? Because I've seen
there is a mechanism for that. And that mechanism is that King Charles walks into Parliament and says, "You're dissolved." Now, what that means is fresh elections. That is the solution, the compromise that we basically came to after Cromwell. That is the constitutional safeguard against
to the British
runaway
system. Is that you have the king that can say, "Hey, like this government is not working at all. We need to."
It is
start over.
I am really hoping Well, I'm really hoping because they haven't put it into effect yet. It's still technically just in the being talked about stage. I really hope if they try to put a bill before him to say we want you to suspend jury trials, which my understanding is that would actually have to be a bill signed by the monarch. That's not an amendment of a previous act. That is a new act of legislation. If they try to do it without, then he can deny royal assent. If they try to put it through using whatever mechanism without royal assent, at that point, I think that is where, to borrow an American phrase, rubber hits the road. That is where you do actually need to invoke royal prerogative and say, no, Parliament is dissolved. You have no mandate to do this. I cannot emphasize enough, they did not run on this. They won. They won. They got a third of the votes, which, because in the USA you call it gerrymandering, our constituencies are gerrymandered to a degree that would genuinely shock you. Labour has an absolute majority in Parliament. They got, I think, at slightly less than a third of the votes of the electorate voted for them. It is beyond obscene. You guys had that big upset where Donald Trump got 49.99% of, and what was it? Hillary Clinton got 49.99999% of the vote. Neither of them got an absolute majority. But in the Republican, there was a tiny discrepancy in her favor, and Donald Trump got the Electoral College because of that. And there were riots in the street because of that. And the same thing happened when George Bush did that back in 2000.
Yep.
What we have with Labour is so much worse than that numerically. It is like what happens here every day in your country.
Electoral
people would be getting shot for it.
Yeah. The popular support numbers versus the representation numbers. It's like the Alawites in Syria were more popular.
Yeah, I remember
is right now.
That was a popularity high for them when they got in with that 1/3. That was after the Conservatives had gone through multiple prime ministers. Boris Johnson was relatively popular. Then he was kicked out for flaunting COVID rules. And honestly, I'd have been fine with that if he hadn't been enforcing the COVID rules on everyone else. If he just said, you know what, use your best judgment, I'm not going to actually mandate it, then I'd have no problem with it. But it was blatantly hypocritical for him to not follow the rules himself. Trouble is, everyone else was doing it in government. He was just caught doing it. Yeah. And then they went through Liz Truss, who never had very much popularity, was stymied by bureaucrats at every turn. I think she did her best, but she got out as well. Then there was Rishi Sunak, who has no charisma, and no real plan, and I don't think really wanted to be Prime Minister, but he was just next in line and got shoved into the position and basically said, oh gosh, I have no mandate, nobody likes me, I'm going to call an early election. And that's how Labour got in. Now, Parliament can call an early election, it can dissolve itself. In theory, it can't go more than 5 years without an election, but it can suspend that if there's an emergency. Who decides when there's an emergency? It begins with a P.
Parliament.
Well, are they just trying to sit
Yeah,
out that, like,
Parliament.
oh, our policies might not be popular, but at some point a payoff where voters start to support Labor again? Is that what they're waiting for? Or
I mean, I don't think there's any realistic chance of that, but what we do have is this new party Reform. Now, as it stands, if the vote were held right now, according to the polls, which you may take with a grain of salt, but also I think according to the betting markets as well, which you may place a bit more faith in, if it happened right now, Reform would overwhelmingly win. The Scottish National Party would still retain some seats in Scotland. I think Conservatives would have maybe a seat in the Borders in Scotland. But Wales would have one or two regional parties of like loony Welsh separatists, and one or two seats in Northern Ireland would go to loony Northern Ireland separatists. Everywhere else is just Reform and the Conservatives. Labour legitimately might not win a single seat. There are plausible scenarios based on the polling in which Labour might have no parliamentary seats.
Wow.
The Conservatives look like they'd actually get a very minor resurgence. They'd basically become the de facto opposition party. But Reform would have an overwhelming majority. They wouldn't need to form a coalition with anyone.
I have seen Reform. One of my questions is somebody on the grounds there is that is Reform legit, or are they actually, like, a lot of people are criticizing? They have
two things. Yeah. So two things to note. So two things to note. One, it's a little bit different for me because I live in Scotland, where there is the Scottish National Party, which is a left-wing, really quite in some ways more left-wing than Labour, in some ways not so much left-wing than Labour. Socially, I think they're actually a bit more left-wing than Labour, maybe not quite so much economically. And of course, they've got more of a focus on Scottish nationalism. So Labour isn't quite as dominant here, though it does have a lot of presence, and so do the Conservatives, though that's Labour riding off of its momentum. Labour would be wiped out in Scotland too, by all polling indications. But Reform is, I would say, is a centre-right party. It occupies the space that Conservatives used to occupy. The thing is that the appetite has actually increasingly moved to the right of them. Everyone's saying deportation is the moderate solution. Reform is offering moderate deportation. So the cultural attitude has actually raced quite beyond what Reform was at. And part of this is because parties have a degree of inertia because they have to publish policy papers. They have to say, this is what we're standing for. They have to bind themselves to certain positions. A few years, and due to things like this grooming gang scandal, due to things like the way the courts are going, the country has moved significantly further from its previous position than Reform was at.
Yeah, Reform.
Although in some regards, I think
that's ride the line of like where it was probably in like 2
simply
to 3
due to the fact that it can't adjust that quickly, otherwise it would be accused of hypocrisy. But on other regards, I think you could say this isn't really a radical transition to the right. This is just people who are vocally opposing left-wing positions that are actually very novel. Most people, for most of human history, did not support open borders. Most people, for most of history, did not believe that there should be blasphemy laws in Britain that would imprison people who insulted Islam. Most people, for most of human history, believed that expressing an opinion was not only not illegal, but nowhere near as illegal as actually raping a person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Do you guys have? Do you guys need to bleep that out? Is there anything like monetization
No.
you're
Nope.
concerned about?
Nope,
Okay.
we're good.
No.
We're too underground for that shit, man.
Fair enough. But I think people genuinely are saying, no, we're not radical. You guys are radical, and we're just not going to be quiet about it anymore.
Mhm.
And that has shifted the conversation beyond what reform, the positions reform kind of bound itself to. And reform is now rushing to catch up to that. But they genuinely, and even with that, they are the most popular party by every metric. To a huge degree, they are the most popular party. They will eclipse every other party in the polls if the election is held right now.
You talked about the posting opinions online thing, and currently I just looked up a stat, and I don't know how legit it is, but I think it's legit. Where if you list countries by number of arrests for social media comments, you have Germany for 3,500 posts or 3,500 number arrests, Belarus for 6,200 posts or arrests, and the United Kingdom, which has a much larger population than Belarus, if I recall correctly, 12,000.
Yeah, there are just two things you need to keep in mind. One is we have a relatively large population for our size as a country, and B, we have a more like internet connected population. Like those numbers aren't going to be as high in, say, Sudan, because a lot of people in Sudan don't have access to the internet. So part of it is that our government is horribly censorious, but part of it is just that we are a very online country compared to some other countries in the world. More people have access to digital networks. We're also a very surveilled country.
Online, and Germany's very censorious of like parties like the AfD and other stuff like that, and yet they only have.
They are, but they don't have the same. They don't have the same surveillance networks we do. By the way, this is a known fact. Every single digital communication that passes through a British network, including this one right now, is preemptively archived in GCHQ. With a warrant, someone can go and access that. Now, if there's end-to-end encryption, they, depending on whether they can decrypt it, may not be able to get anything useful out of it. But keep in mind that there's no equivalent to your Fourth Amendment rights against unreasonable search and seizure. Every digital communication in Britain is preemptively seized and archived. It just can't be accessed by law enforcement until they get a warrant for it.
That's wild.
So the equivalent would be
Prism was slightly similar to that, but like
consider what the equivalent for this would be for handwritten mail. This would be every time you send a letter, a blindfolded man opens the letter, prints out the photographs, locks them in a box, reseals the envelope, sends it on its way, and then takes his blindfold off. If you are later accused of a crime, the police can come and unlock the box and look at the photographs of the letter.
Well, yeah, I mean,
it's that, but for digital communication.
It's a perfect excuse for what's the phrase where it's constructive. They know they have the evidence, they access the evidence illegally, and then they recreate a false paper trail for how they got the warrants and stuff like that.
Noble cause corruption, I think, is what we'd call that in Britain. But yes, absolutely, they theoretically could do that, and that we are the most surveilled country on the planet. I think there was London is the most surveilled city in the world. And I think the sheer number of cameras, the sheer number of digital recording devices that are everywhere, we are by far and away more surveilled than any other part of the world. So that is part of it. It's simply more viable to have a censorship regime in Britain because this is a panopticon island. We are always being presumptively watched. If you accuse someone of a crime, you can get that record. Did you hear the case of the woman who was recently prosecuted after a man savagely beat her? More so than the man who beat her because of the word she referred to the man as in a private message that she sent to a third party. She didn't go up to the man in the street and use that word.
Mm-hmm.
I have to emphasize this. It's not even really fair to say that she insulted him.
So
She said that in a private. You can't even call this defamation of character because she didn't say it publicly. You can't say she hurt his feelings because she didn't say it to him. She said this in a private conversation with a third party.
So this is the question. I remember,
and she's being punished more harshly than the guy who put her in hospital.
what I remember.
What the fuck are we doing?
I remember reading about that, and the first question I had, and a lot of people were talking about, were like, they thought her friend, the person she was communicating with, had kind of like ratted her out to the authorities for saying that. Was that the case, or was this the case of just like the communication she sent was digitally copied?
It apparently was that, but that's the thing. Because of the recordings, it's not just a case of, oh, she says it. They can get the original message that she sent, which wasn't encrypted, and they can confirm it. So that means that they know the friend didn't just doctor it. So there's no good. It's no good her denying it.
Yeah.
So it's not like the friend just has a screenshot. No, couldn't you have edited this? No, we have the original transcript.
That's fucked.
Now that's it. That's insane. That shouldn't be illegal. There's no claim here because there's no damage here.
Yeah.
You can't claim emotional damage because it wasn't said to the person in question, and you can't claim defamation because it wasn't said publicly. There is no basis in common law for this to be a crime.
That's wild.
Well, so I'm wondering, is just out of curiosity, is 1984 required reading in the school system?
I wasn't required. Now, again, Scottish system slightly different. I wasn't required to read it. Was required to read Animal Farm. Was not required to read 1984.
Okay, because even in the U.S., I think everybody reads 1984 at some point. Does that check out for you?
I mean, a lot of people have read it, but it is not mandatory reading. At least it was not under the Scottish curriculum for English when I went to school. I can't comment on whether that's changed since I was at school, and I can't comment on the English, Welsh, or Northern Irish system because I know education works slightly differently there.
I mean, we get this, I think, nationwide across all 50 states that it's like, oh, To Kill a Mockingbird and 1984 and...
Funny enough, To Kill a Mockingbird was part of our curriculum. So, weirdly enough, was A Streetcar Named Desire and The Great Gatsby. I think like half of the books we were mandated to read were written by Yanks.
Interesting. See, A Streetcar Named Desire I can almost get for like reasons for like a theater. The Great Gatsby is really like, that's really core to like Americana, and like obviously there is some...
I'm not sure why that one was on the schedule. I understand it may not have been on everyone's schedule. It may have been that there was a selection that year, and it just happened that the exact years I was in made that part of it. But yes, that is the reality. I do know Animal Farm was one we did. Another one was An Inspector Calls. Again, a lot of very left-wing coded ones. Like An Inspector Calls is a very leftist work. But the thing, and I have to be very careful not to use this framing myself, because it is a very popular framing in the media, and I don't think it's really true. But it's very easy to label society is moving to the right. Because these are not really right-wing views, particularly. I think society has just stopped pretending to be as left-wing as it was. Like, left-wingers decided arbitrarily one day that we were all going to go along with their novel ideas, and we all just pretended that was normal, and now we've stopped doing it. But it's not a radical right-wing position to say, if you enter this country or any country illegally, you should have to go back where you came from. That's just a basic principle of having a border. That wasn't a radical right-wing position at any point in human history. That's just what having a border means. It wasn't a radical right-wing position at any point in history that I'm aware of that physically intact transgender or transfeminine individuals should have to wear chastity cages if they're going to access what are generally considered female spaces. That wasn't a radically right-wing position. That was considered pretty normal. And now suddenly it's a radical right-wing position. It wasn't a radical right-wing position that we should have a military capable of defending us or the capacity to raise one in times of war. That wasn't a radical right-wing position, that we should be capable of defending ourselves from attacks by hostile nations. That's not. Now, having a standing army is potentially controversial, but having the means to raise an army or the means to enact a military defense, that's never been seen as a radical right-wing position. Was it? I think it may have been Evola who said, "My positions are not radical. They are simply the positions that almost every human being in history before the French Revolution considered perfectly normal."
It sounds
I'm
like Evola.
paraphrasing slightly. But yeah, that is essentially the position we are at. So we are not so much turning right, we have just stopped pretending to hold radical left-wing beliefs because they sort of created a false consensus. They made it seem like this was the socially acceptable thing to do, and then they just, I don't want to use the phrase gaslit because it's kind of overused, but they did that strange thing that you can do with social pressure, that weird little defect in the human mind, that if you can create a consensus or the impression of
the
consensus will go along.
programming.
It's like when you go into a lift, generally you face the door. If you go into a lift and everyone else is facing the back way, generally most people will turn to do that as well. Even though there's no reason for it, you'll have to turn around again when you get out. If you're in a room and smoke starts billowing up from the door, but nobody else gets up to leave, a significant number of humans won't do that. And the trouble with mass media is that you can create the impression of consensus even when consensus doesn't exist. The radio, television, newspapers, mass media technology allows the creation of a false consensus, which triggers this herd instinct, this human social instinct, which exists because it was evolutionarily useful. And what that does is it allows a very small group of people with potentially very, very extreme beliefs to get the rest of society to go along with them, even if no one actually agrees with them. And I think we're seeing partially, I believe, due to the internet, we're seeing the end of that consensus technology simply because everyone now has the means to mass produce media. So it's not just one dominant signal. But for a large portion of history, I'd say really the last few hundred years, a small left-wing elite seized control of media apparatus and created a false consensus. And in so doing, they triggered the consensus instinct within humans.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we are adapted to survive in a group scenario where, like, yeah, if everybody disagreeing with the group on what seems like a religious matter is going to cause you physical harm and not allow you to reproduce in the long term.
Yeah.
So that
is that survival. Even if you think a path is less optimal, doing it with the benefit of 20 to 30 other people with you gives you a higher chance of survival than doing what you can alone. At least that was the case for most of our evolutionary history. So this kind of group instinct did keep people alive. Even going to a more dangerous area or hunting more dangerous prey than you otherwise would have. If you were in a large group, you had to. And that, to some extent, that is the reason humans were able to hunt down mammoths and smilodons. You had to override the natural human instinct, which is to run the fuck away from that big scary thing, because the rest of the group is going together. And the group can take it down. So it was actually evolutionarily advantageous to override your own judgment and go with the group. The groups that did that survived. The ones that didn't weren't able to hunt those prey, weren't able to overcome those predators, weren't able to carve out that ecological niche at the top of the food chain, and so they died out, or at least didn't reproduce as much. And now we've reached the point where you can create, due to mass media apparatus, which has only really come about, I think the earliest you could say is movable type printing presses, which originated in a very early form in China, but they were quite inefficient in the 1200s. But then there was a much more efficient metal print matrix version that came about in Europe in the late 1400s, early 1500s, and that really skyrocketed this. But there's the issue. You've got a small group of people producing a lot of media. And if a coordinated group takes control of that, they can create false consensus. And this happened with the radio, happened with television, and for a while it happened with the internet. But then things became more distributed, and now the ability to create false consensus is starting to vanish. And with it, the leftoid ability to trigger this evolved instinct is starting to go away. And I think that's why we're seeing not a shift to the right. We shouldn't call it a shift to the right. It's the abandoning of a false consensus. We were all pretending to be left-wing to get along because we assumed everyone else was too. We're now just kind of waking up to the fact. It's like, have you ever read that G.K. Chesterton fact, The Man Who Was Thursday? Do you mind if I spoil it if you haven't?
Go ahead.
Go ahead. Yeah, I love Chesterton.
It's a story about a man who is hired by what he initially believes to be the authorities to infiltrate a dangerous group of anarchists who are, these are bomb-planting fanatics. And there's a group of 7 of them. They're all named after a day of the week. The book is called The Man Who Was Thursday. And eventually, the guy realizes, aha, one of these other men is also an infiltrator sent by the police. Then they get together and they realize, oh, so is this guy. And then they realize, in a previous meeting, 6 of them were actually infiltrators. There was only one real anarchist there, and they missed their chance to overpower and arrest him, because there were 6 of them and 1 of him. They could have done it, but they didn't realize they were outnumbered. Again, that's a very, very, very broad overview. That's the key point. It's still well worth reading The Man Who Was Thursday by G.K. Chesterton. I do recommend it. But that's a broad overview of the point I'm making. They had the advantage all along. They just didn't realize it because everyone assumed that everyone else was on board with anarchy. There was only actually one true anarchist at the meeting. And they could have just jumped on that guy. They could have overpowered him. There were 6 of them, 1 of him. But everyone thought that they were the only infiltrator.
That is a very common, it's like both a common theme that happens in real life, and it's also a running joke, especially among like kind of right-wing extremist circles that like if you have a group of
right-wing militias.
The right-wing militias.
How do you know you're at a KKK meeting? Because the other federal agents are there too.
Exactly. And there was also, I think there was a movie with Daniel Radcliffe. I don't remember what the heck the name of it was.
Imperium.
But he poses as an Aryan Brotherhood member and goes undercover and tries to root out terrorism, and he kind of finds something. And at the last second, it's just like, oh no, that dude was working for us. That's the ATF. And then you have like the DEA also like, oh, this is our guy. You can't do anything there. And at the end of it, he's just like, so how much of this is real and how much of this is just like other infiltrators essentially just perpetuating this, going along with it, trying to capture somebody. And it's just kind of like
justify our budget somehow.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. The Hegelian dialect, I guess, to a degree.
Indeed. It's create the problem that you then justify your same trick that Palpatine used to subvert the Galactic Republic.
Yes.
And the same trick that Commander Pyre used to subvert the Colossus for the First Order. You've seen Resistance, by the way? You should see Resistance.
TV show?
Yeah.
We'll check it out.
Oh, it's on Disney Plus.
Oh, okay.
Yes, that's to a very large extent the scenario we're facing here. We are not turning to the right. We were always moderates, and we're just now realizing that a false left-wing consensus has been put up with it. But in reality, pretty much everyone agrees that we should have a border. Pretty much everyone agrees that we should at least be capable of forming a military, if not having a standing military. Pretty much everyone agrees that we should prevent hostile ideologies from taking over public spaces. Pretty much everyone agrees that violent repeat offenders should not be allowed to roam around. Pretty much everyone agrees that uncaged trans femmes should not be sharing the woman's changing rooms with your mother. Pretty much everyone agrees that you shouldn't be locked up for expressing an opinion on Facebook. Pretty much everyone agrees that we shouldn't be paying more money in benefit frauds to foreigners than we pay to support our own veterans.
Mm.
Pretty much everyone agrees on this. It's a very tiny group of left-wingers who've convinced everyone that it's the other way around, and we're just starting to recognize the trick now.
Mm.
We're not really turning to the right. We are moderates. We always are moderates. We always were. We're just now realizing that we're in the majority, which for the longest time we didn't realize.
Mm.
Are we possibly going to have another episode before Christmas time?
I believe
Christmas
we
or New
are.
Year?
Yes, if we're not going to do, actually, yeah. So probably next Thursday, the 18th. Yes, that's the 18th. Is going to be our last one before Christmas, and then I don't know if we were going to do something for. I want to do something for New Year's, kind of. But that would be
Maybe
like
around then, yeah.
maybe, yeah, because like otherwise after Christmas that's New Year's Day, and we're also approaching episode 200. But short answer to your question, yes, next week, ideally Thursday, 8:30 Mountain Time, we will have an episode.
Might be a bit late
Well-
for me, but I'll try if I can.
Oh wait, sorry, no, 7:30 our time, which might be a little bit. So let's do this. We could probably do it a little bit. I mean, Max, I don't know what your schedule is like next Thursday, but like,
I don't want to mess up your guys' sleep schedule. But
No.
no, it's we late for us, at least for me. Like I can be up till midnight my time and not have a problem. Max, I don't know about you, but like we can also.
My only commitments are to get up very early to ski on the weekends.
Yes, this is true.
That's-
But like we could
Anyways.
we could do an earlier episode our time if it's a little bit easier, so you're not up at like.
it is a little easier, but I'm happy to. Anyone else going to be there? Anarchy in Black or?
Oh, it'd be
you know,
fun to call in Marcel.
It would be cool. We'll see if we can. We'll reach out to Marcel. We'll see if maybe Luke M1911
he's
wants to
making
come.
waves in the Twitter spaces these days.
He is.
I,
Yeah.
I don't know if he's
it
safe
is
for us.
going on about. I think it's Israel or some other Middle Eastern country.
Something like that. It's called Israel or I don't know. One of those like weird foreign names. I can't really pronounce it. But yeah, he's talking about that a little bit. We might actually be like baggage for him that might hurt his image now. So like we love him to death, and I'm sure like he'll always have like a place for us in his heart. But at the same time, like we don't want to have him on if it means that like people are gonna go. So, Marcel, did you go on this podcast with these two anarcho-capitalists who like openly make racist jokes and like all of this? And Marcel's just like, oh fuck, yeah, I did, yeah. And it's just like he doesn't need that evil on him, like.
Fair enough. Yeah, I guess being associated with Yimra would also probably, even if it's indirectly, would probably not be great.
Probably no, and like that's the thing too. Like Yimmer's kind of off doing his own thing, like on Instagram,
Yeah.
but like outside of that, he's very good with like never coming back to this side of the internet again. And honestly, I don't blame him. So
Fair enough. Yeah.
Mhm.
How's that food inspector guy?
Food
Liberty Bell.
Liberty Bill. I think he's doing well. Have we ever had him on the show? I know he's in the podcast, the Discord, but I don't think we've ever had him on. He's doing well, as far as I know. Him and his wife doing well. Family's doing well. Kids are good. I think they're on number 2 now. I think. I think he's also. Yeah, I think he's also still trying and failing to make a good-looking pizza. But, yeah, it's just one of those things. But Mr. Cybersmith, is there anything else you wanted to share with us? We don't want to keep you too late. It's been a pleasure having you and discussing this with you.
It's going to basically be the morning. One other thing that I think is possibly, what's your take on this whole Russia-Ukraine situation? Because it looks to me, and if you've seen Stakui's recent post on Deathonomics, it's actually, I can link you that video if you like, but if you just go to Deathonomics and Russia, which is what he calls it, Russia, like the best case scenario for them now looks like a Pyrrhic victory, but I honestly don't think they're even going to get that. The rate of attrition for them is horrible. They're losing ports. They've lost their ally Syria. They do really just seem to be willing to burn up everything on the altar of Ukraine. And I think part of it is logistics. And from my admittedly layman's perspective, there's no other country in the world it would be easier for Russia to invade than Ukraine.
Yeah.
They have lost a huge amount of manpower. I think the only reason I think they haven't tossed in the towel and said we're done is if they give up on this, no one will take them seriously in conventional warfare ever again.
That is
They
true.
will be a new North Korea. You're scary because you have allegedly nuclear weapons, though we don't know how well maintained there are, how many of them ended up on the black market. And didn't Israel, in fact, Israel apparently got nuclear weapons. Now, we know they have nuclear weapons because we saw in Mission Impossible, in that new Mission Impossible film, we saw that they have them. So it's confirmed that they have them.
There was also the sum of all fears. They also talk about that a little bit then too.
But didn't North Korea and Israel start getting them like after the Soviet Union broke up? And I'm not sure how much of that was just black market purchasing of things that got sold off, because a lot of the Soviet military arsenal got sold off. That's why you're always seeing AK-47s in the hands of warlords and child soldiers in Africa.
I will say, so during the breakup of the Soviet Union, the U.S. was very deliberate to buy up or to stabilize the biological, chemical, and nuclear weapons of the Soviet Union, which is why there's a bunch of bio labs in Ukraine right now that paid all those scientists to essentially keep working.
Yeah, same thing that the New Republic did after the fall of the Empire, because otherwise you end up with a whole bunch of equipment like on Sorgan, where those Klatooinians were using it to raid the Spotchka farms.
This is true.
That's,
right.
That's my...
The U.S. and the CIA specifically very much bankrolled these guys to keep them fed and paid so that they wouldn't get siphoned off to other programs or whatever. But at a certain level, there's probably some slippage of that deterrent that went away. However, I will say that Russia can still bring people to the space station. They have intercontinental ballistic missile capabilities. They have nuclear plants that have latent abilities to generate feeder material to build uranium and plutonium triggers and stuff like that. And I don't think there's any reason to believe that the Russian bombs don't work.
Yeah.
Or if the other part of that is that they've been retrofitting a lot of their missiles and making them to true hypersonic missiles and cruise missiles and other kinds of devices. So in a sense, actually, the U.S. is the one that should be worrying that we have the outdated mutually assured destruction devices, because our missiles are all very aged at this point. Some of our triggers are reaching their 70-year lifespan for the plutonium, where the half-life is that they might be on the verge of not detonate. And stuff like that.
That's fair. But I will also say, if I'd asked you about the state of Russia's ground and sea forces in, say, 2021, you probably would have given me a much more optimistic answer than you'd give me now. That's the thing. Russia has been, and this is the problem every authoritarian country has, the incentive is not to tell the truth. The incentive is to cover your ass. So everyone, I genuinely don't think Vladimir Putin knew how bad of a state his own military was.
Right. That's fair.
So now...
I think to be...
My only point
NATO
is we can't trust Russia's word on how good its military is.
That's
NATO and Russia. We've been giving them Western wonder weapons the entire time, and they haven't been able to make a breakthrough and collapse the Russian lines at the same time. And I just say, like, technologies developed to the point that neither side could anticipate how different technological developments like drone warfare or anything like that could impact the battlefield, to where you're going to get a new stalemate the same way that both sides adopting machine guns and artillery in World War One.
Stalemating against a much smaller and weaker adversary, though, doesn't look very good for Russia.
It doesn't.
I was
going to say it doesn't look very good, but at the same time, like, the problem is that if Russia really doesn't care how much manpower it spends on this, Like, I think that's one of, like, the big differences between Russia and the U.S. is, like, the U.S.'s example, I would probably say the closest one that most people would familiar with and would share a common consensus on would be Vietnam, where we had superior manpower, we had superior equipment, we had superior everything. We killed
But you
way
also
more.
had you also had video footage of coffin-draped flags.
Exactly.
It doesn't matter, but for every single coffin-draped flag, there was a massive pile of Viet Cong corpses.
It doesn't matter.
One of
Exactly.
those was on the news, and one of those wasn't.
Exactly. Yeah. So in that respect,
the issue is there does come a point where if Russia loses more men, there's no one to work its factories. There's no waiters to serve food at its restaurants. There's no one to drive the buses.
This is
there
true.
does come a point where they lose too many people to function as a country.
This is true, but
I completely agree that from a PR perspective, they have more capacity to absorb losses than the USA does.
But the question then becomes,
from an economic perspective, that is not an infinite capacity. It's greater than the USA's, but it is not infinite.
No, this is true.
From an economic capacity, there is a hard limit where someone is going to have to walk into Putin's office and say, if we lose more soldiers, we can't recover economically.
See, that's the other thing, though, is like we have to be able to believe a lot of the figures that are also coming out of the Ukrainian government as to like how many Russian forces they've killed or neutralized or vehicles. And I'm not saying they're necessarily lying, but I would say that there is a degree where both the Russians and the Ukrainians are essentially polishing the numbers to make it look like they're doing better than they actually are. Are the Russians lying about their own casualty rates? Yes. Are the Ukrainians lying about their own casualty rates? Yes. And I would say in that regard, Ukrainians have way less wiggle room because there are, as a whole, way less Ukrainians. So the question then becomes, if we're running out the clock, do you actually have the ability to run out the clock against Russia? And historically, most countries that have tried that don't run out the clock against Russia. Like, whether it be weather...
Most countries don't do that offensively, though.
Offensively, yes.
Ukraine might be economically crippled by this. It might become a complete failed state. But its alternative is annexation, which I don't think it really wants.
There was a peace deal that was put forward by Trump that, like, I'm not saying I support it or anything like that, but the idea would be that the territory Ukraine has lost, it would cede to Russia, and Russia would agree to, not that you could necessarily hold them to this, would agree to stop trying to advance and take more territory, and they would draw lines.
And I think not that you can hold them to that is the problem. Without Ukraine either joining a mutual defense pact like NATO or getting nuclear weapons of their own.
Again.
Again. So the only way I can see them agreeing to this is if Donald Trump says, we will give Ukraine nuclear missiles. And I don't think he would do that.
I don't think any country's willing to do that because I feel like European countries, based on how fervently they have been backing Ukraine compared to the U.S. now, would be more inclined to do that, and even they don't want to do that. Like, even the discussion...
Here's the thing, is that it's literally just the U.S. and NATO preventing Ukraine from acquiring nuclear weapons. They have the scientists, they have the nuclear power plants to produce the
they could enrich the fuel.
They can do it in 3 days if they really wanted to. It's just contingent on the fact that when the Soviet Union broke up, they really said, "Hey, we are going
we want to minimize
for your mutual defense because if you give up your nuclear weapons."
And this was the idea of non-proliferation. We want to have as few actors as possible with access to nuclear weapons because it reduces overall volatility. The other scary thing is Ukraine doesn't need a sophisticated missile delivery system because they've got a bunch of people who speak Russian, who blend in to Russian society. And Russia is heavily dependent on conventional lorries and railways and road networks. They could smuggle a bomb if they wanted to. They could. You saw the drone strike they pulled off on Russian airplanes. If Ukraine does access a nuclear weapon, whether they make it themselves, buy it on the black market, or someone in NATO just gives it to them, they could deliver it into a major Russian population center. And that is because Russia is so concentrated in terms of its population. That is kind of a nightmare scenario, both from a human perspective. We are talking about millions of deaths.
Yeah.
And the geopolitical instability, of course. But I think if Ukraine were backed into a corner, it would do that. So, the idea of a conventional war being won by Russia, I don't think is very likely. Even if they somehow make it to Kiev, I think they would face a situation much like the USA faced in Iraq, where it just becomes a guerrilla war.
I would agree with that.
Because apart from anything else, the stated reason they've used is denazification. Once you've said that, and this is after I said this, I'm going to say something that is possibly the most controversial thing I've ever actually said on your podcast. Once you've said that, you're obliged to hang a lot of people, which is the same thing the USA did when it hanged Saddam Hussein. All of those Baathists who were not nice people, I'm not by any means saying that Saddam Hussein and his inner circle were nice people, but they were not radical lunatics. They were in many cases evil, but they were rationally evil. They joined ISIS. In fact, they arguably formed the core of ISIS's competence. They were the non-crazy bearded lunatics in caves who showed ISIS how to function. They were the only people in ISIS who could use spreadsheets. And the reason they did that is that the USA, by its stated justification for the war, was obliged to hang them. So they had no choice but to join ISIS. They can't surrender. They can't sue for peace. Russia's stated justification for the war in Ukraine, by a certain precedent, requires them to do the same thing. The Ukrainian people will not have a choice. The upper echelons of Ukrainian society will have to form a guerrilla movement because Russians will be obliged to execute them. And this is why I say, and this is where I'm going to say something very controversial, I think most of the people who were executed at Nuremberg should not have been executed. I think that particularly, and one of the guys who was imprisoned as well, there were two people in particular, Keitel and Dönitz. They were the men who signed the surrender order. They should have been set free. One of them was in prison for 10 years. One of them was executed. I think it was Dönitz who was in prison for 10 years. He was an admiral, surrendered on behalf of the Navy. He was actually the second briefly Führer after Hitler was no longer able to be Führer for reasons that can't be talked about on YouTube.
So Dönitz died in 1980. So he was
he was imprisoned. Yeah.
Yeah.
So and then it was Keitel who was the leader of the army. He was field marshal, I believe. He surrendered on behalf of the army. He was executed.
Yep.
Now, to be clear, they did some really bad things. They signed like the commando order. They were responsible for the commissar execution order. They fucking knew about things like the Action T4 program. They knew about the final solution. They knew what was happening to people in Poland and Czechoslovakia. They knew about the Einsatzgruppen. These are not good people, and I'm not saying they should be lauded. The reason that historically you did not kill people who surrendered. And that is, if you do, nobody ever surrenders again. So what we have actually created under the modern rules of war is the worst of all possible worlds. At an engagement level, at a tactical level, you are obliged to accept a surrender no matter when it is offered. So there's no gradation. You could kill 50 people, fight to the last bullet, and then say, I give up, and they have to take you in. So you have no incentive not to fight to the very end, not to fight to the last possible second, which means, but the Geneva Conventions say, no matter how long you unnecessarily prolonged a fight, you weren't going to win. Once you issue a surrender, it's valid.
Yes.
However, at a leadership level, we have this idea of offensive war being illegal, which means the only scenario where you are allowed to fight a war is when you accuse the other people first of being criminals,
Mm-hmm.
which means you have to execute their leadership or lock them up in prison for a long time. This was the problem. This is why Saddam Hussein, even fucking obvious he was going to lose, the coalition was going to take everything out. Again, I apologize for my language.
No, you're good.
This is why he hid in a hole in the ground, because he knew he was going to be hanged.
Yes.
This is why he unnecessarily prolonged that war for months, got hundreds of his own citizens killed, massive unnecessary death, because he knew he would be hanged. This is the problem with the Nuremberg precedent. Once you do that, every war lasts as long as it possibly can. The old rule, the rule that was followed by everyone from Richard the Lionheart to Julius Caesar to Genghis fucking Khan, was the earlier you surrender, the better you are treated. Mm-hmm. And you never exercise maximal punishment on enemy leadership if they surrender. Early surrenders get treated really well. Late surrenders get treated worse. People who don't surrender at all get fucking massacred, and the leadership is always spared. This is why Napoleon was just exiled and sent off to live in a little island. They didn't hang, draw, and quarter him, even though legally they could hang.
So this is one thing I wanted to bring up.
This is where Venezuela comes in, where
this is why This is why every single war now ends with a guerrilla army occupation, because there's no alternative. Once you've declared an invasion, legally, according to international law, you are only allowed to do that if you accuse the people on the other side of something that you are now obliged to hang them for. This is why if Zelensky loses, he gets a rope around his neck. If Putin loses, he never gets to leave Russia ever again, because the moment he steps into another country, he gets a rope around his neck. This is the problem. No one is allowed to surrender anymore, because surrendering gets you fucking killed. This is why the Nuremberg trials were goddamn insane. The moment you fucking kill Keitel, the man who issued a surrender, the moment you lock Dönitz up in prison, the man who issued a surrender, you are guaranteeing that no one is ever going to surrender again. They let their moral outrage override their judgment, their sense of logic, and now we're all paying the goddamn price for it.
That was excellent. Also, I wasn't attempting to warn you about language at all. Your language was totally fine for the show. One thing I wanted to mention is that this is like going forward over the next couple of months. This is a scenario that's going to play out in Ukraine outside of military conflict. Is Zelensky has publicly announced that he is looking into restoring elections within Ukraine. I want to say in January or February. And there is an idea that if he does this, he will be voted out for an individual who is possibly more open to negotiating for some sort of peace deal where you actually do just surrender. So I guess one scenario that I almost kind of see playing out here is the Ukrainian people have an election that is as fair and open and legitimate as it possibly can be. And I'm not saying that's going to be the case, but let's just say hypothetically. Let's say they vote out Zelensky, and they vote out a lot of other Ukrainian officials in the government that have, for example, kind of been like caught up in this weird corruption thing involving like what are they doing with the aid money and all of this. So let's say those people get voted out. And we'd be open to a ceasefire. Maybe we'll talk about land secession. Those people,
and also that gives Putin rhetorical space to say, "Oh, the denazification has worked."
Exactly, exactly. Because then you can take Zelensky, and for example, you can take individuals from, say, like the Azov Battalion is an example that I can think of where they are actually openly using Nazi symbols. They're using Totenkopfs and shit like that.
Those symbols. Hey, to be fair, you guys have got Platina, and symbols have meant lots of different things to lots of different people. So that's not Russian judgment.
No, that's totally fair. I'm totally open to that argument.
You guys have a guy running for office, or I think he actually won office now, who's got a Totenkopf tattoo.
Yes, it was a Democrat, I believe. He was either a Republican who turned Democrat, or a Democrat was like something like that. But yeah, he had a Totenkopf tattoo.
A Democrat. Yes.
Okay,
but I'm just saying, let's not be throwing stones.
No. I'm not at all. I'm just saying, like, let's say you take individuals like this and like Zelensky and several other people. Okay, so they're deposed. Putin
they expect one of us in the wreckage.
They expect one of us in the wreckage, brother. So they're deposed. Putin can say, all right, denazification has worked. Now we are more open to like walking this down because we accomplished our main goal of denazification. What then, and my question, what happens to Zelensky and the rest of the Ukrainian government? Would this deal be that they just have to go live in exile like Assad? Do they get handed over to Russia? Because that to me is the most likely scenario that maybe won't happen. But if the election goes a certain way and Zelensky gets voted out, it will mean an end to the war very quickly because the new government is simply just going to go, yeah, we're kind of tired of this. So we're actually going to talk about a ceasefire. And yeah, what do you think would happen in that case?
In that case, I think it's quite likely. Certainly, I don't think there's... in that scenario, I think Crimea definitely doesn't stay. But what you could end up with in that scenario is some kind of schism where, say, the 40% of people who did not like this, basically do what the French Revolution what the French resistance under de Gaulle did, which, by the way, was illegal. To be clear, Charles de Gaulle was a terrorist and should have been put on trial after the war. Not just because he's French, but also because he's French. So you may end up with what happening is that the people in the west of Ukraine are under a government that says who move east and start a guerrilla campaign. That is a legitimate possibility, and I think in that case, unfortunately, you may end up with something like what's happening in Sudan, where the violence just doesn't stop. But the other thing I worry about is I don't think it's a good idea to set the precedent that Russia just gets to annex places. I get the desire to minimize the overall loss of life, but again, precisely because you've got a lot of people who know that they'd be likely to face criminal charges. B, you've got a bunch of people who just don't want to cede that land. You've got people who, even if they are in favor of the deal in theory, ceding Crimea, possibly parts of eastern Ukraine as well, to Russia, they want some guarantee that Russia won't go further. And if the government can't secure that, I suspect a lot of them will do what the Baathists under Saddam Hussein did. They will join a radical movement because they have no alternative. So I think you are potentially, in that scenario, I suspect, unfortunately, Ukraine might well turn into what Iraq was for the USA. A guerrilla campaign that costs many lives, costs a huge amount of money, drags out forever a viable answer to because no one is willing to admit that they were wrong. Now, I hope I'm wrong about that. But unless there could be some kind of guarantee, I think the trouble is the only two guarantees I think would actually prevent further aggression would be either Ukraine joins NATO or Ukraine gets its own nuclear weapons. And I think if that's the case, then they would probably be willing to accept fairly large concessions. They'd certainly give up Ukraine. They'd likely give up large parts of They'd certainly give up Crimea. They'd certainly give up probably parts of eastern Ukraine. Certainly they'd give up the territory they managed to capture in Russia. Kursk Oblast. They'd be willing to give up the territory they seized in Russia. They'd give up Crimea. They'd probably give up parts of contiguous Ukraine. But that would require them to have some kind of hostilities. If you don't get that, then I think there are just enough people in Ukraine that will say, we don't accept this, we're forming a guerrilla army. And of course, they'll be denounced by the new government the same way Vichy France denounced Charles de Gaulle.
I think we could see like a rump state Ukraine, like a Ruthenia, that is accepted into NATO, and then Novorossiya is allowed to annex that territory. And that the thing is that rump state Ukraine clear umbrella of the United States at that point.
Yeah, that's the only way I see that working, is they enter NATO, and at which point there is the very hard, the Poles, the Finns, Britain, France, everyone fucking goes for you.
Even Turkey.
Yeah, even Turkey, who have their own reasons for wanting to fight Russia. They've got a fairly large
ceremonial member of NATO at this point.
Yeah.
They have a pretty decent army that's quite close to Russia.
They do.
They've got more
Sure,
naval
but I
power
think
than
as far as
Russia
their
does.
motivation goes, that
They have
are,
none. All right, gentlemen. So we are approaching the 2 hour mark for this podcast, and I love this conversation. I want to keep having it.
It's great.
But we got a part to this because this is great. So what we're gonna do, like I said, we're gonna coordinate next week. We're gonna do probably an earlier episode, especially if it's gonna be like this length. But
Sod's Law, by the time we do that, there will be boots on the ground in Venezuela, and we'll have to talk about that instead.
Perfect, excellent, because I do want to talk more about that as it actually portrays to the whole Ukraine thing, but we're going to do that another time. So
Pertains.
Yes, thank you. Sorry. So, Mr. Cybersmith, thank you for joining us this evening, and
I'll try to be a bit smarter next time. As I said, sorry, I'm just not very well directed now.
Bro, you're totally fine. Like, I'm out here in like a t-shirt. Like, we're just chilling, man. This is not the Joe Rogan podcast. We do not have a dress code. But well, okay, yeah, but no, T-Ran, I hope to participate next Thursday. It was interesting talking with you. It was interesting talking with you, sir. We hope you're well, and yeah, we look forward. Hopefully, you can make it next week. But if not, this is definitely a conversation we'll have to have in the future.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yes.
Bye.
He's just boom out. All right, so this is a really good episode.
It was a really great episode. It'll go down in the annals.
Yeah.
I wanted to say, like, there were like these media hints about like, oh, Maduro could get this like plush exile from the U.S. and that, like, I think that is like the main signal that could change in U.S. diplomacy, that we're going to allow people to like, hey, just walk away.
Exile is in, baby.
Yeah. But aside from the normal sign out, taxation is that.